Hello everybody, it's Sarah, and today I am back with another review which feels like it has been ages since I filmed the review. And the review, or the book that I'm going to be reviewing today, is Fathomfolk by Eliza Chen, which I believe is a debut novel, and it's also the first book in a new series which is called Drowned World. I have so many drowned things by now series, like burned and drowned just are the two adjectives that appear really very often in series titles. Anyways, this was also the buddy read for April for my book club, which, for those of you who don't know, my book club is of Queens, Witches and Valkyries, and it's all about reading adult fantasy written by women and genderqueer folks. And in May, I mean, there's only like a week left, 10 days left of May, but if you're still interested in joining the May buddy read, in May we're reading One Dark Window by Rachel Gillick, and then for June we already decided on the buddy read as well, and it's gonna be Voyage of the Damned by something White, I believe. I'm not quite sure. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Today we're focusing on this book, and it feels so long since both I've read this book as well as since I've done a review that it somehow feels like I've lost all capabilities of doing reviews. So let's see where it brings us today. This book, I think I ended up giving it 3.5 or 3.75 stars. It's, as I said, the first book in a new series, and it's also high fantasy. It is set in the city named Tiankali, and Tiankali is a place where humans and Fathomfolk, so underwater mystical creatures, come together. It is also a place where, because of historical reasons, those two types of people, so humans and Fathomfolk, aren't on equal footing. While humans pretty much decide everything, Fathomfolk have to wear kind of cuffs that suppress their magic, because otherwise they would attack humans or they would be too dangerous. At the same time, there's more and more Fathomfolk coming into the city because their havens are slowly being destroyed by pollution. So that is the setting that we found ourselves in at the beginning of the book, and we follow three different characters. The first of them is Mira, who is the first Fathomfolk captain of the border guard. So she is the first Fathomfolk who has made it this far in a like executive branch of the government of the city, and she hopes through that she can improve the plight of her people. She also is half human, half siren, so she is half Fathomfolk and half human. Then the second character we follow is Nami, who is the little sister of Mira's boyfriend, who is ambassador of the Fathomfolk within the city, and she is exiled to the city by her mother after trying to do something to better the life of Fathomfolk all around, not just in the city. And so now she has to go to the city and find stuff out for her mother, and kind of gets in league with maybe the wrong people, maybe the right people. She basically gets in league with the rebellion, or like kind of like activist Fathomfolk. And then the last character we follow is Cordelia, who is a sea witch who also has her own kind of motivation. And now my battery is already blinking, so let me switch it quickly out and then we'll get to my thoughts on the book. Let's get into my thoughts on the book. So I don't know if I mentioned it already, I gave this book between 3.5 and 3.75 stars. And I did overall have a good time with it. There's a bunch of things where I would say they weren't perfectly done, and then there's a few things that I really enjoyed. One of the things that I like at first really enjoyed it, in the end ended up having slightly an issue with it, is the way that the book is structured and the way that the chapters are structured. This book has incredibly short chapters. Like the average page length of a chapter is about 7 pages. You have around 420 pages to this book, and 60 chapters. So very short chapters, and the chapters themselves are also kind of disjointed, especially at the beginning of the story. So they feel very short within the chapters themselves. There's not really any time to build up tension and to build up action, and not just action in the sense of action scene, but also action in the sense of something happening or like getting a feel for the characters. So there's not the time to build that up before we jump to the next chapter. That makes the story feel a little bit disjointed and a little bit like we're just looking at single snapshots of scenes rather than really getting a full picture. It also makes it so that the pacing is incredibly fast, and personally I'm just, you know, I don't necessarily always prefer fast pacing in books. I actually generally am someone who prefers a slower paced book that takes its time to build up. I do prefer shorter chapters over longer chapters. However, there's ways to do shorter chapters that make them feel more connected to each other, which wasn't necessarily the case in this book. Another issue I had was with the character of Cordelia, who vibes-wise, I was vibing with her. I was really enjoying her. However, throughout the entire book, I didn't really feel like we were ever really given her motivations, why she is doing what she's doing. And so that just was something that bothered me. I wanted to know more about Cordelia. I wanted to know why she's doing what she's doing. I wanted to know what her goals are, where she's going, etc. However, we were not really given that in this first book. I'm hoping that in the next one we will be given the information. However, sadly, that wasn't there in this one. And then the last thing that I slightly had an issue with is the way that the resurgence activist group was framed within the story. Generally speaking, and that is like a praise for the book, and I will get into it later when I talk about the stuff that I liked. Generally speaking, I did really like the nuance in terms of different approaches to attacking a system or to acknowledging that the system is broken and trying to change that. I do like it when we get different characters from different sides all kind of wanting to change the system, but disagreeing on what exactly is necessary to change the system or to break the system. Like, what can we do? I think it also provides like amazing grounds for character like growth and character change, so I'll get to that later. However, we had kind of the two sides. We had Mira, who is a border guard captain, as I said, who wants to change the system, but who believes that it is better to change the system from within. We have Nami, who thinks that changing the system from the outside is necessary, and then we have some characters who think, okay, we can go to any lengths to break the system just completely. And those are like the activist groups that we get to see and that Nami falls in with. Those people are also a lot of times like, or well, among those people are those that are the main antagonists of this first book in the story. And while it is still clear that like overall the system is bad and the system needs to change, with the focus on the Fathomfolk and on those activist groups and on Nami, who kind of falls in line with those activist groups and, you know, kind of gets into the wrong waters, so to say, it kind of, I don't know, it lacked a little bit of nuance for me there. And that's not to say that I don't think that the topics that were talked about in this regard were very important. However, I don't know, it just felt like the main villain, the main antagonist of the story, of the series, should be the system and the humans in power right now, and not some activist groups. And right now, for me, it doesn't quite feel like that's gonna be the case even in books going forward. It more so feels like if anything is gonna change, it's gonna be incidental, and it kind of feels like a secondary thing that's gonna happen to the main goals of the main characters. I don't know if that made any sense, but yeah, that was like my main big gripe with the series. However, I am completely open to seeing how things develop in the future books. Now, as for the positive things, my favorite thing about the book, I think, was Mira as a main character. I really appreciated and enjoyed her, and I loved with how much nuance the author went about building her character and also building the struggles of this character, because you have this character who very much wants to change things, but who right now is part of the system. I don't know yet how far or in what way the character is gonna leave the system behind or change things from the inside or whatever, but I just like seeing the struggles of those types of characters, no matter what decisions they end up making. And I also really liked the nuance with which Mira was looked at in terms of her kind of straddling the line between human and Fathomfolk, because she is human and she's also Fathomfolk. However, she is kind of being discriminated against on both sides, because in terms of how humans look at her, humans only see her as Fathomfolk. In terms of how Fathomfolk see her, both humans and Fathomfolk look at her with kind of like mistrust, because she's a siren, and sirens have the siren song with which they can, you know, convince people to do stuff. So that's a power that is not well liked, I would put it like that. She is also kind of looked down upon by Fathomfolk who have grown up outside of the city and who see themselves as the real Fathomfolk, whereas she is just, I forgot what it was called, but it was basically, you know, she's not the real type of Fathomfolk, or she, like, because she sees the city as her home rather than the sea, she is looked at with pity and distrust. And so I thought that Mira was a really interesting, nuanced character. I really loved her relationship with Kai. I loved kind of seeing a very healthy relationship from the very beginning, rather than, because Kai is her boyfriend, like is introduced as her boyfriend at the very beginning of the story, and I don't know, it was like a nice change to have a main character that already is in a relationship in which she is happy. And yeah, there are struggles between the two of them in the course of the book, but they go strong, basically. As I said, I vibed with Cordelia. I did not vibe as much with Nami, to be honest, but she's just the type of character that I don't get on board with that easily. Very impulsive, very young, very inexperienced, and those are just not the type of characters that I typically enjoy following. However, I do think if those are the type of characters that you enjoy following, that you can enjoy Nami. Aside from that, I also really enjoyed the world building. There were some inconsistencies or some aspects where I would have loved more detail, but I just loved the vibes of the world building, and it just felt very, at both ends, very like, I don't want to say lush because that's not really right, but it felt like very vibrant, the world building. That was the word I was looking for, very vibrant, but also very, like, the pollution that is all throughout the city and all throughout the seas right now also felt very, very apparent. I'm gonna be interested to see if the series in the future goes a lot more into the subgenre of environmental fantasy, which is truly just a subgenre that I wish we could see more of. And yeah, overall, I think this is a solid debut. It's a solid start to a new series. I'm definitely gonna pick up the next ones. I might even though I usually don't do that for like 3.5-star books, I might even pick up the next Illumicrate one, because, like, I mean, just look at this absolutely gorgeous book. So yeah. Anyway, with all of that said, that was it for my review of Fathomfolk. Tell me in the comments down below if you have read the book or if you're interested in reading it and what your thoughts are. If you enjoyed this video, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and also maybe subscribing. All the links to my social media as well as to my book club, of course, are linked down below, so go and check those out, and I hope I'll see you very soon. Bye!